on the native species. So they're reducing their population, and a lot of them are able to outcompete the native species. So they're winning the competition there for resources against the native species. So now the native species doesn't have as much food, it doesn't have as much shelter, not as much water available to it, because these organisms are basically taking over, and their population will grow very rapidly. So we're going to have 4 different examples of an introduced or an invasive species. So our first invasive species occurred in Guam, okay, and it's the brown tree snake in Guam. And what this did to the island is it has caused extinctions on the island. So Guam had no native snakes before this. So there were no snakes at all of any kind on the island before the introduction of the brown tree snake. And the brown tree snake was thought to be basically on a military ship, a military cargo ship, after World War II. And so it got off the ship in Guam, and it set up shop. And so since there were no native snakes there, it had no competition, it had no predators for it, and since its introduction to Guam, 12 species of birds, as well as 6 species of lizards, have gone extinct due to its predation on the island. The next example is a plant example. This is what's called Kudzu. Kudzu is in Texas, as you can see here. It's prevalent in the south. It is an Asian plant that was introduced by people. We thought we were helping by bringing this plant over. Its job was to help control erosion, and what it did is it just took over. Okay, you can see it grows very, very rapidly. It's very difficult to get rid of. Some of you may have encountered kudzu before. If you haven't, a lot of you have encountered that Asian jasmine that people use in their yards as like ground cover and stuff. And that stuff is it's very similar. It's very, very difficult to get rid of. Okay, kudzu will grow very rapidly. It's a vine-like plant, so it will wrap around things. And it's difficult to get the roots out. So it has spread and is out competing some of the other native plants. Our next example is this bird called the starling. Officially, it's the European starling. Okay, this bird was released in 1890 in New York City. It was released in Central Park. The guy that released it was trying to get every bird mentioned by Shakespeare released in North America. So he thought he was, releasing this beautiful bird into North America, and it wouldn't be a problem. Well, it's a bird. Its population spread very rapidly because it was able to travel long distances. Currently, the population of starlings is estimated at over 2 million of these starlings across the entire U.S. They are having a major impact on skylark populations and song thrush, 2 other kinds of birds that they are out competing, because these birds eat ridiculous amounts of food. They fly together in large clouds, and a large cloud of starling can eat up to 20 tons of potatoes in one day. So they are out competing these other birds, and they're decimating crops as well. The last example that we have here are what are called zebra mussels. Zebra mussels look like they're no big deal, but if you look at this water tower here, you can see how quickly and how thoroughly they have covered this water tower. Zebra mussels are native in Europe. They're native into the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. They are invasive in North America, Great Britain, Italy, Spain, Sweden. What they do is they will damage ships, they damage harbors, they damage water treatment plants because they get into the pipes of the water treatment plants, power plants that use this. That power plants that use water to cool them or along the water can be disrupted by these as well. So in the water treatment plants, TX treatment, Okay? And the water treatment plants, they bring in, so the water intake, in the treatment plant, you're bringing in the water and you're filtering it. The water intake brings in their larvae, because their larvae are microscopic, and so it's able to get through the filter, and then they will, as they grow and develop, they will clog the pipes inside of the water treatment plant. These have spread very rapidly. You can see on this diagram over here, this diagram only goes from June 1988 until September of 1999. They first were found up in the Great Lakes, and you can see how quickly they have followed the river population. There was talk here a few years ago in the newspaper that they had found some of these mussels in Lake Ray Hubbard, and so there was concern that they were moving into Texas. So these mussels spread very, very rapidly. Okay. So with all of these different things impacting a population, the environment, the potential, an introduced or a non-native species, the density dependent, as they're growing and they're starting to reach their carrying capacity and their resources are becoming limited. And the population has a lot of these things working on it. Adaptive radiation, if they've traveled a long distance and they're trying to fill a niche somewhere else. The number one way that that these populations are going to be able to survive is that they have to have variation. Variation is what is going to allow for these changes in environment. For instance, if you look at this picture here with the fish, you see that there is based on temperature, there is a few organisms at either end of the spectrum that can survive in very warm or very cold water. The benefit to that is if there's a big environmental change and this curve now shifts this way, there are still some fish that are able to withstand that high temperature and reproduce. But if that variation wasn't there and all of the fish were located just right here in the center, then they may not be able to survive and reproduce if the environment changed. And remember, it's always about, with evolution, it's always about your ability to pass on your DNA. And so when we're talking about population survivorship, that's going to have an impact on evolution as well. And so we'll be working with this. We'll be doing a lot of work with the math portion of this in class, not so much with the other pieces of it.